Unfortunate injury news for the Marlins. Connor Norby is out for the next 6 to 8 weeks after undergoing surgery on his hand.
You are Locked On Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Marlins. I'm your host, Jeremiah Geiger. I've been a diehard Marlins fan since I was 12 years old, and I've podcasted about the team for the last 4 seasons. Go hit me up on X at Jeremiah Geiger 2, and thank you for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. Don't forget to hit subscribe on the YouTube channel, and let me know your thoughts in the comments section. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. The Marlins are going to be without their third baseman for the foreseeable future. Connor Norby is expected to miss 6 to 8 weeks after undergoing surgery on his hamate bone. And, that really puts a damper on the Marlins' corner infield spots. Norby hasn't had the best season, but that leaves a gaping hole at third base. I expect in the short term, the Marlins are going to replace him with a combination of Graham Pauley, who's on the active roster, and Javier Sanoja. Javier Sanoja is like that jackknife. He can play all over the diamond, and now the Marlins are probably going to need him to pick up some of the slack at third base. Graham Pauley, he made the opening day roster, due in part, ironically, to a Connor Norby injury. Didn't perform too well, eventually got sent down to AAA. He's been recalled, and now he's going to have an opportunity, which might be really his last opportunity, to prove that he's a viable option in the Marlins organization. On the season, he's hitting just 294 plate appearances, no homers, a slugging percentage of .271. You look at the Savant page for Graham Pauley, not a lot stands out except, his defense. I think Graham Pauley is a better defender at the hot corner than Connor Norby is. But when you're playing third base in the major leagues, that's a slugger's position. You need to provide some offense. And neither Connor Norby this season or Graham Pauley have done so. Javier Sanoja, he doesn't really profile as a true third baseman. He's a kind of a slap hitter, good bat to ball skills, but he's not going to be your everyday third baseman. He's going to be somebody that you plug and play at whatever position you have a need for him. And right now, I think the majority of his time is going to be spent platooning with Graham Pauley. Pauley swings from the left-handed side. Sanoja is a righty. Pauley struggled this season. There's no doubt about it. Connor Norby struggled before he went on the injured list. It's a very disappointing event and kind of caps off a really disappointing year for Connor Norby this season. On the season, Norby hit just .241 with 6 bombs across 273 plate appearances. That's a step back in the power department from a season ago. In only 194 plate appearances, he hit 9 homers. So he's not hitting for as much power as was expected coming into this season. And the biggest issue for Norby offensively has been the swing decisions. He's chasing and whiffing a ton. Chasing at a 33.5% rate. He's whiffing at a 30% rate. That's just not sustainable. That's not what you want to see from somebody that isn't hitting enough home runs to justify the big gigantic hacks that he's taken at the plate. So for Norby, it's about rehabbing the injury, rehabbing from the surgery he just had, and just trying to get better. Because I think now, midway through the season, as we're transitioning into the second half of the year, post All-Star break, it's fair to pose the question about the Marlins' future at third base and first base. Both of the corner infield positions this season have been brutal offensively. Norby hasn't really done much. Graham Pauley, as I've told you, he's He's just a backup. He's not anything special. This is his opportunity to show that he can stick in the major leagues. But the honest truth is that he hasn't looked like a major league hitter. And then first base, you had a combination of Matt Mervis, and now it's mainly Eric Wagaman, Liam Hicks. Liam Hicks is a positive. Hicks has been good for the Marlins, but he's not playing there every day. And defensively, he stands 5'9". He's not a first baseman by trade. He's a catcher. Wagaman's been underwhelming. He's been okay, but nothing to write home about. And I view Eric Wagaman, as a stopgap, like a placeholder for this Marlins team. Not every position on the Marlins is going to be perfect. Not everybody is going to have a standout productive season statistically. We look at the outfield. Kyle Stowers, he's a lock. He's figured it out. He's played himself into being an all-star. The middle infield, I think, is set for the foreseeable future. You have Otto Lopez at shortstop. Great glove, good hitter, and he's translated his game into more power. He's hitting more power than a season ago. I love to see that. Xavier Edwards, prototypical leadoff hitter. They made the switch. X goes from short to second, and he's thrived there. But in the infield, apart from the middle infield, it's the corner spots that I have the most questions about in regards to who on the roster is really part of the Marlins' long-term plans. This past week, the Marlins drafted with their first round pick, 7th overall, Iva Arquette. He's a slugger out of college, viewed by many as the best college bat available. And the expectation is going to be he makes his way through the minors fairly quickly. I don't expect him to, not be on the Marlins in 2 or 3 years. I think the timeline could be pretty quick with him, and they need that. Does he stick at shortstop? That's the question. I think he goes to third base, and that's where the Marlins would need him. He profiles as a power hitting third baseman. If the hit tool is there, and he faces better pitching and survives and thrives against off speed, breaking balls, high velocity, then there's no reason why Arquette, given the raw power that he has, could be potentially the third baseman for many years to come. Do they want him to stick at shortstop? Possibly. They said that he was drafted as a shortstop, but everything that I've seen says, Arquette, the range, he's probably going to move off of shortstop eventually in the pros and be a third baseman where he'll thrive because he's got a cannon of an arm. And I'm fine with that because first base and third base right now, they're glaring weaknesses for this Marlins team. Wagaman isn't going to be here in 2027. At least I'd be shocked if he is. Third base, Connor Norby struggled before going down with the injury. So this trade deadline, I'm going to talk about that later on in the show. Do the Marlins try to target somebody who's a first baseman, third baseman type? Davidson De Los Santos, who plays third, plays first. He's a corner infield profile. He's still not ready. He's still not ready. I'm disappointed in his performance this season. There's just so much swing and miss to his game still. He's striking out this season at a 27% clip, hitting just 241. It's not overall the OPS is under 700, and that's against AAA pitching. So there's some clear concerns with his development, and he was supposed to be the guy that comes in and just provides the power. But now will he even hit enough to be an everydayer in the major leagues? A lot of questions for the Marlins to sort out. Coming up next, I'm going to talk about the big what-ifs for the Marlins in the second half of the season. There's a lot of questions that I'm going to pose and see what will happen if so-and-so does this. and it's mainly surrounding the pitching staff. That's coming up right after this. We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping, and that's where Gametime comes in. Gametime makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. One of my favorite parts about Gametime, guys, is the all-in pricing. You go on the app and there's a tab. You go to all-in pricing. You're going to see exactly what you pay. There's no hidden fees. There's no, I didn't know this is how much it exactly costs when you go to checkout. You see the number, that's what you pay. Really like that. And I also like the panoramic seat view that Gametime offers. You see exactly what you're going to be seeing when you go to that concert. So take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. I appreciate all the everyday listeners out there being part of the Locked On Marlins crew. Share the podcast with your friends, all the Marlins fans you know as the season continues. Locked On Marlins is your place to go Monday through Friday. And it's time to talk about the second half what-ifs for the Marlins. I talked about the pitching staff. I gave a hint in the last second. It was going to be about the pitching staff. And the number one what-if I have on my list is what if Sandy Alcantara returns to form? What if he goes back to the pitcher that we all expected him to be heading into this season? It certainly changes the dynamic and the feel, A, around his future with the Marlins, and B, the question of trading him. So we're 2 weeks away from the deadline. The Marlins are going to have to, wait and see, or all of us are going to have to wait and see what happens with Sandy Alcantara. Do they move him at the deadline? What is his performance going to be like the next couple of weeks, where he'll probably make 2 starts, maybe 3. Let's just assume the Marlins don't trade him this season, but he goes off the rest of the year. He figures it out, he regains his form, and he pitches much like his Cy Young self, closer to that version of Sandy Alcantara than to this version that we've been seeing over the last few months. You roll into the offseason, into the 2025 offseason, and I think you're in a position where you're the Marlins, you're Peter Bendix, that the urgency to trade Sandy Alcantara is now. And you're going to see a Jesus Luzardo deal. In the sense of the winter meetings, we're trading you, that's it. We're selling now, and we're trying to get value now. It's different, though, because Luzardo was traded at his lowest value. I think if Sandy Alcantara pitches the rest of the year and performs, then to a degree you'd be selling at the highest value you possibly can. Sure, it's not 2022 Sandy. He didn't win the Cy Young Award. But he performed the back half of the season. And now you roll into 2026. Do you still carry him on the roster? If he performed well and you can make a trade? I don't think so. I think if Sandy Alcantara pitched well at the beginning of this season, this isn't even a discussion. I would be sitting here talking about potential returns for Sandy in 2 weeks. It's a done deal. He's getting traded. If Sandy doesn't pitch well the rest of the year, that's where I say don't trade him. And the best thing you can do is try to reevaluate his pitching and all the mechanics, everything that combines into that approach from Sandy on the mound. Everything that went wrong, you try to remedy that, and you pitch him in 2026. because you can't sell low on a former Cy Young winner like that. If you believe that he's still got juice, he's still got gas left in the tank, and he follows up the first half with a bad second half, what are you going to do except throw him in 2026? There's nothing you can do. But if he pitches well, I think you trade him in the offseason. There is a possibility that Sandy gets traded at the deadline. It's a small one, in my opinion, but there's still a possibility. There's still teams out there that are pitching needy, that rumors are floating around surrounding Sandy Alcantara, but it's wait and see. Again, I don't know if it's enough. I don't know if teams are going to pay enough at the deadline for a pitcher that at the All-Star break had an ERA over 7. You never know, though. I'm expecting the unexpected this deadline. More about the trade deadline in the next segment. The other what if for the Marlins. What if Jansen Junk continues to have sustained success in the rotation? He's got a 2.68 ERA in 50 and a third innings. 4 walks in 50 and a third. 4 walks this season. If you're curious as to the percentile of his walk percentage, it's 100. That means it's pretty darn good. It's the best of the best. He doesn't walk anyone. His command is incredible. And that's why I think Jansen Junk has a real chance to solidify himself for the Marlins rotation in 2026 with a good season in the back half of the year. A good second half. There is some concerns, of course. He gets hit hard, but it is what it is. The expected stats, the expected ERA is still at a tidy 3.70. So even if there is a little bit of regression, he's still a really good pitcher. And he's somebody that I think the Marlins can build around or can keep in their rotation for next season. It's not the flashiest. He doesn't have the flashiest stuff. But when you work in the zone and you have a decent fastball with good rise and you locate everything, then you're going to find yourself carving out a pretty nice major league career. Jansen Junk's been a great find for the Marlins. And I think if he has, more of the same success in the second half of the season, he's an absolute lock for the Marlins rotation in 26. The last what if I have is, do we see Joe Mack and Jacob Marcy at some point this season? Jacob Marcy has quickly emerged as one of the best Marlins prospects in AAA. There's really not that much to not like about the guy. He's hitting in every sense of the word. He's been on absolute fire recently. On the season, he has a 15% walk rate, only a 20% strike rate, a WRC plus of 120. He's hitting 240, OBP of 371. When the Marlins acquired Jacob Marcy last year, one of my concerns was the hit tool. Was he ever going to hit for enough average? He walks a lot, but he was hitting under the Mendoza line, and he's figured that out. He's been on absolute fire over the last couple of months, and I think we do see Jacob Marcy. He provides a ton of speed. He's going to steal you bases, and the power this year has showed up as well. He has 12 homers on the year through 87 games. He had 10 a year ago. So he's already surpassed his home run total on the season. You just love to see that. You think that the Marlins are going to call him up at some point this season. That's a fair bet. If you think that, I agree with you. I think you're going to see Jacob Marcy as a September call-up. Joe Mack is the other guy who I'm really interested to see what the Marlins do. If the Marlins trade Nick Fortes at the deadline, and there's speculation about that if they will, then I think that opens the door for Joe Mack to make his major league debut in September as well. Those Mack and Marcy are the two prospects that I really want to see in September. Give them a cup of coffee in the majors, see what they got, let them see major league hitting, be in that environment, and then you roll into 2026 spring training with Marcy and Mac having expectations of making the major league roster. I think Jacob Marcy is a really good player. I think Joe Mack, really good player. He's been on fire recently, much like Marcy. Let's see here. Joe Mack, I had it pulled up here, and my window closed, but I'm going to find it for you guys. For the last few games for Jacob or Joe Mack, the last 28 days rather, Mack is hitting .371 with 6 bombs. Last 90 days, he's hitting .262, 9 bombs, OPS of .770. He's the real deal. He is the real deal, and I view Joe Mack as the future for the Miami Marlins. It's all about when do they want to call him up and give him an opportunity in the major leagues. The Marlins are there's a logjam at catcher. Nick Fortes, Liam Hicks, Augustine Ramirez, who shouldn't be catching. He needs to move off catcher. If you move Augustine off of catcher, just end the experiment. Joe Mack, Liam Hicks, Nick Fortes, if you trade him, that opens the door. The other situation is if you just move Augustine Ramirez off of catcher, call up Joe Mack in September, and for the last month, you just have Nick Fortes, Joe Mack, and Liam Hicks with Augustine Ramirez DHing full-time. There's that option as well. But certainly exciting times if you're a Marlins fan and you're looking at the farm system. Those are the two guys that I'm really looking at. We're now 2 weeks away from the trade deadline on July 31st, and the Marlins have some huge decisions to make. I'm going to talk about the Marlins trade deadline plans right after this. Locked on Marlins is on all the major podcast platforms, so you can listen to it on the go. If you haven't, leave a rating, leave a 5-star rating, leave a review, leave a like on the YouTube channel, and I appreciate it. I appreciate everybody tuning in throughout the week. It's a fun time doing the podcast, and I love talking about the Miami Marlins. Trade deadline sneaking up on us, guys. 2 weeks. 2 weeks from now, the Marlins will have a lot of decisions to make. And the biggest one, I think, comes down to, like I talked in the last segment, do you sell low on Sandy Alcantara? And the second part, do you trade Edward Cabrera? Do you sell high on Edward Cabrera? The trade rumors are starting to roll in. I go on social media, I go online, you see it all the time. I've seen Kyle Stowers trade proposals. Get that out of here. I don't want to see it. It's not going to happen. Not going to happen. But I'm excited to see what Peter Bendix cooks up. How is he going to handle this deadline? Because the Marlins do have some real value that they could potentially move and just continue building this thing for the coming years. Building the machine that is coming in the future. Sandy Alcantara, I don't want him to be moved unless you're going to get premium value for him, and I have a hard time envisioning that a team will. Now, the possibility is there. The possibility is there, and I'm going to explain what I mean by this. I look at a team like the Toronto Blue Jays, who are smack dab in the middle of the AL East, ready to compete now. They're first place in the American League East. They had low expectations by the national media and their interpretation of the competitors this year. I didn't expect the Blue Jays to be terrible, but I also didn't expect the Blue Jays to be where they are right now. They're 55-41. They got a good offense. They need a pitcher. I think you need a pitcher. And the Blue Jays are in a position now. You have Kevin Gausman, Chris Bassett, and Jose Barrios. Decent, but not great. The Blue Jays could be desperate for a starting pitcher. Maybe they go and they call the Marlins and they're like, hey, we believe in Sandy Alcantara. We get the years of control. We're in win now mode. We'll pay for him. And that's where you trade. If not, you hang up the phone, you say, have a good day, and you move on. Blue Jays also could call up for Edward Cabrera. Edward Cabrera has been the best pitcher this season. And what I think is interesting and what I'm trying to really consider is, what do other major league teams value more? Do they think Sandy Alcantara is completely washed? Do they think he's done for? Or do they think Edward Cabrera is just having a blip on the radar? He's not the real deal. And, we'd rather have Sandy. I don't know. What team is going to choose between those two pitchers? Because I do think both are available. Who gets the most calls? Edward Cabrera, Sandy Alcantara? Does one of them get traded? Do none of them get traded? Do both of them get traded? A lot of answers we're going to have in the coming weeks. The other scenario for the Marlins is trading Ronnie Enriquez. Do you trade a reliever with an additional 5 years of control who's been electric this season and has top-of-the-line stuff, who could potentially and probably should be your closer? Do you sell now? Do you package him? Would that make a Sandy trade more enticing to a contender? You still get a good package for Sandy, but then you throw Enriquez in there, and now the package looks really good. That's a possibility. I don't mind keeping Ronnie Enriquez. In fact, I think there's an argument that you should keep Ronnie Enriquez. With 5 years of control, I don't see why you trade him. I don't want the Marlins to trade Ronnie Enriquez. But we've seen Peter Bendix trade a third of the roster a season ago. It's a very realistic possibility Enriquez is moved. The other piece to this deadline is, does anybody get traded from the lineup? Is Jesus Sanchez, is this the year for Sanchez to be moved? I don't think Sanchez is going to get you anything really valuable. At the deadline last year, Sanchez stayed. He's been a Marlin his whole career when he was acquired, or in the major leagues, his entire major league career. And they didn't trade him last year. And I wonder if that has anything to do with the perceived value that he has. He'll hit 250. He'll run into some home runs, play subpar, okay defense at a corner spot, nothing special. We're going to pass. I just don't think the future for Jesus Sanchez is going to be in a Marlins uniform. But who's going to pay for him? What can you get back for him? I wonder if he gets traded. Do the Padres pull the trigger and get Jesus Sanchez to fill a corner outfield spot? It feels like a good match. I think that if Jesus Sanchez had real trade value, then he would have been dealt last season. The Marlins traded Brian De La Cruz. Brian De La Cruz is in the minor leagues. He had a fall from grace. Jesus Sanchez is still around. But he wasn't traded last year when the Marlins sold off everybody seemingly of value that was on the active roster. So why didn't Sanchez get dealt? Is the market just not there for him? Is the market at this time in the season? Is there going to be a trade market for Jesus Sanchez? What about Dane Myers? Dane Myers, lots of control left. He's slowed down after a really hot start to the season, but he plays a really good center field, has a cannon of an arm, and is still a good hitter. There's nothing bad about Dane Myers. And he's the Marlins' everyday center fielder. I wonder if teams are going to be asking on Dane Myers. Don't trade Dane Myers. I don't think there's any rush to trade Dane. He doesn't have the track record of success that you want to get back some good prospects. Sometimes you got Dane Myers, and the prospect that you would get back for Dane Myers isn't anything special, and might not equate to Dane Meyer's production right now. So yes, there's a lot of questions for this team at the deadline, and I think I'm going to be surprised by what they do. I have a feeling that Peter Bendix is cooking up something big, that we're going to be sitting here in 2.5 weeks being like, wow, we did not expect that. Because there's still action that has to be done. There's still steps forward that the Marlins have to take in order to be a competitive team. And the draft, the trade deadline, those are ways that a rebuilding team operates. You can't mess it up. I'm excited for what they do. And Peter Bendix has made some really good trades in the past, especially at the trade deadline. Kyle Stowers, Augustin Ramirez, that was awesome. Let's see what he does in round 2. That's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Marlins. I appreciate you all for listening. And until next time, guys, stay safe, stay locked on, and let's go fish.